Hello and a warm welcome to this R03 introduction video with myself, Sue Cox. In this video I'll be covering the format of the R03 exam, the key syllabus areas which will also guide you to where you should be dedicating a lot of your study time. I'll go through some of the pages of the tax tables so you're aware of the information that's on them. I'll remind you how the exam is tested. You have both the CII study text and the Red Mill Advanced materials, and I'll show you how these interact. And remember, the Red Mill Advanced materials are complementing the study text, not replacing it. And lastly, I'll provide you with your revision session dates. Let's start by having a look at the format of the exam. In total, you'll have 50 questions to complete, and a lot of learners think that this must be an easy exam as it has less questions. However, this just isn't the case, and you'll find out why over the next few slides. As with all the CII exams, they will test your application of knowledge, which means the questions are very much scenario based. The first 39 questions will be multiple choice, and the last 11 will be the tricky multiple response questions. And don't forget, you're doing a tax exam, which of course means you must remember to take a calculator to your exam. Let me remind you how the two types of questions work. The first 39 questions will be multiple choice. You'll have a question, a statement, or even a scenario with 4 possible options, and only one of these options will be correct. The last 11 questions are the multiple response questions. You'll still have a question, a statement, or even a scenario, but this time you could have up to 6 options. The one thing you do know is that only 2 of those options must be correct, but there could be 3 correct, 4 correct, or even 5 correct, but they will never all be correct. Unfortunately, to get that 1 mark, you've got to pick all the correct options. If there were 3 correct options and you've only picked 2, then you would not get the mark. And that's why they're quite tricky. The good news is that quite a lot of these multiple response questions will only have 4 options, which makes answering them slightly easier, especially when you know that 2 of those 4 options must be correct. When you read the exam questions, look out for any words which are in bold, capitals, or underlined, as these will be the key words in the question. The biggest problem with the R03 exam is the time limit of 1 hour. There just doesn't seem enough time to complete the full 50 questions, and a lot of people will run out of time. Now, one of the reasons you may run out of time is you have calculations to do. Not many of them, but they will be basic, but calculations tend to take time. Now, the pass mark is still 65%, which now means you need to get a minimum of 32 questions correct to pass. And because time is very tight, think quality rather than quantity. Even if you don't finish, you can still pass. The exam's tested on a computer, and if you've already completed previous exams, you'll know how this works. However, if you need reminding, there will be a few slides coming up later in this video. And the last thing to say on this slide is that you'll receive a copy of the tax tables at your exam centre, which is very important when you're doing a tax exam. The tax year that you're going to be tested on is 2019-20. As with all the CII exams, the questions will be based on the syllabus only, and you'll find the syllabus at the front of your CII study text. The CII has what we call a syllabus year, which runs from the 1st of September 2019 to the 31st of August 2020, and that's why you'll still be tested on the tax year 2019 and 20 right up to the 31st of August 2020, even though in reality we may have gone into a new tax year. You should be studying from the most up-to-date CII study text, which is dated July 2019. And this study text is still very big when considering there's only 50 questions in the exam. And any changes to the exam syllabus or study text will be posted online at the CII website. You'll usually receive an email to advise you that an update has occurred. This means that you'll always have access to the latest information, and you should regularly check the CII website. The general rule concerning any legislation or industry changes is that they will not be examined until 3 months after they've come into effect. Now, the R03 syllabus can be a little confusing as there's only 4 learning outcomes but 12 chapters in the CII study text. Learning outcome number 1 is the first 8 chapters of the CII study text and will be the first 15 questions in your exam. Learning outcome 2 consists of 2 chapters, which are chapter 9 and 10 of the CII study text. In total, you'll have 15 questions, 3 questions on chapter 9 and a massive 12 questions on chapter 10. So even before you start studying, you know that chapter 10 is the chapter with the most questions in the exam. If you're doing the exams in order and have just completed R02, you should like chapter 10 as a lot of the information you would have already learnt. Learning outcome 3 is chapter 11 of the CII study text and is another big chapter with 10 questions. And the last learning outcome is covered in chapter 12 and is also 10 questions. Now this is a great chapter as it's a consolidation of all the other chapters. The multiple response questions will be tested on chapters 9 and 10 and 11 of the CII study text, and these will be the last 11 questions of your exam. Now, looking at the CII study text, the last 3 chapters equate to 32 questions of your exam. And remember, you need 32 to pass, so make sure you spend some quality time on these chapters. As I've already mentioned, time is not on your side in this exam, so it would be a really good idea to familiarise yourself with the tax tables before you get to the exam centre. You will get a copy of the tax tables in the exam, but unfortunately you haven't got the luxury of looking up everything, as this will really eat into your 1 hour. On the first page you have all the income tax thresholds and the rates, which is brilliant. But I want to highlight the bottom of the first page, which you can see on our slide. This gives you all the information you need when calculating dividend tax. It details the dividend allowance of $2,000, which is available to everybody, regardless of their tax position, and it also lists the rates for the different types of taxpayers. Now, the title of this exam is Personal Tax and Trusts, which means that you will have questions on trusts. I think the tax tables are a bit misleading on trusts, so I want to make sure that you're aware of this. As you can see, the word trusts is on the tax tables, which might make you think that this is the income tax situation for all trusts because the word is plural. But this information only relates to the trustee's income tax liability on discretionary trusts, no other trusts. And lastly, you have the rent and room relief of $7,500, which may also come up on this exam. Chapter 2 of your CII study text is all about national insurance. You don't have many questions in the exam, typically 2, but the good news is that page 2 of the tax tables details all the thresholds you need. So don't waste your time learning them, you just need to know how to apply them to client situations. This page also provides you with all 4 classes of national insurance, which is very helpful. Chapter 3 in your CII study text is all about capital gains tax, and yet again there's a lot of information on the tax tables. The individual's rates of 10 and 20% are listed, and even the surcharge of 8% is detailed, and this is a charge that's on top of the individual rate when you're selling a residential house that's not your main residence. You have details of the entrepreneur's relief, which has a rate of 10% and a lifetime limit of 10 million. And at the bottom of the page, you'll see the exemptions listed. The individual exemption for this tax year is $12,000, and then underneath this, it states the words trusts generally. which have an exemption of £6,000. But yet again, I think this can be misleading. All trusts have the exemption of £6,000 except the bare and absolute trusts. They will have the full exemption of £12,000. Chapter 4 in your CII study text is on inheritance tax, and the tax tables have so much useful information that I've got 2 slides to cover it. The nil rate band, the inheritance tax rates, and even the chargeable lifetime rate of 20% is detailed. Under the headings of main exemptions, you have listed the main residence nil rate band, which is £150,000. You'll see that there is an asterisk by the side of this, and that's because if the total estate is more than 2 million, then the 150,000 is reduced. But the good news is that the tax tables even details how much this is reduced by. This is the bottom half of the inheritance tax page. Here you can see that you have exemptions listed. The annual exemption amount of £3,000 comes up all the time in this exam, and although it doesn't say so on the tax tables, if you've never used this exemption, you are allowed to carry it forward for 1 year. And this means that you could gift £6,000, and if you were to die, this would not be liable to any inheritance tax, as it's covered under the annual exemption allowance. The small gifts exemption of £250 is listed, and this means that you can give £250 to as many people as you like, as long as it's not to the person that you gave the annual exemption to. Even the gifts on marriages are listed. And lastly, you have taper relief and quick succession relief available. Stamp duty is chapter 7 in the CII study text. There won't be many questions in the R03 exam, but the good news is that you have a lot of information about the thresholds and rates on the tax tables. And don't forget that if you're buying a second home that is not your first main residence, then you will have an extra 3% charge on each threshold. And if you've just completed R02, then you'll already be comfortable with stamp duty. Now this might be your 3rd exam with the CII, so you're already comfortable with how the exam is tested. However, I'm just going to remind you with a few slides. Once you arrive at your exam centre, you'll be given a key code and a PIN number. The first screen that you'll see on the computer is this one. You'll need to enter your key code to access your exam. Now once the key code has been entered, this will be the next screen that you'll see. This will show your own personal details, and all you need to do is to check that these are correct and then click to confirm. Your screen, of course, will say R03. The PIN number that you were given when you arrived now needs to be entered, which will unlock your exam. Once you've unlocked your exam, this will be the next screen that you will see. This gives you the opportunity to either start your exam straight away by clicking Start Exam, or you can go through screens which will show you how to complete your exam by clicking Next. Now by clicking Next, you have 10 minutes to familiarise yourself with how to answer the exam questions on the computer. I'm going to click Next so that I can show you just a few more of the screens so that you know what to expect when you arrive at your exam centre. However, after seeing these screens, you might want to click Start Exam straight away, which is absolutely fine. However, I still quite like the idea of you still clicking Next, because this gives you 10 minutes to compose yourself, calm your heartbeat and really prepare yourself for your exam. But of course, the choice is yours. This slide shows you how your exam will look. On the left-hand side, you'll see numbers which represent your questions. You'll always know which question you're on, as it will look bigger on the left-hand side. At the top on the left, you'll see time remaining. This helps you with your time management by knowing the question you're on and how long you have left. Once you've chosen the correct answer, left-click the mouse and the answer will become highlighted. And once you're satisfied that you have the right answer, click the Next button at the bottom right of your screen, and this will take you to your next question. On this screen, you can now see that we have some numbers on the left which have turned grey, This is showing you that you have answered these questions. You're now on question 3 because this is bigger than all the other questions. Now, when I do multiple choice exams, I always use the elimination technique. If I know that an option is definitely not correct, then I eliminate it by right-clicking the mouse, and a line will then appear through that option. Typically, you'll be able to eliminate 2 options from most questions, which means if you still don't know the correct option, at least now it's only between 2. If you've eliminated an answer that you now think is correct, it's not a problem. You simply right-click the mouse again and it will remove the line. At the bottom of this screen, you'll notice that there is a flag button. This is really useful. If you don't know an answer, you can flag the question. If you flag a question, then a flag will appear by the question number. As you can now see on the left-hand side, question 5 now has a flag by it. This means that you'll be able to see all the questions that you flagged throughout the exam. You can click into these questions at any time to review your answers. However, if you are 100% sure of an answer, then don't flag the question. You can also go back to a previous question by clicking the back button, and of course click Next to go on to your next question. Once you've finished all the questions and you're satisfied that you've completed the exam, then click the Finish button in the top right-hand corner. If you haven't answered all the questions, a prompt will appear on the screen and you can go back into your exam by clicking Cancel. If you have completed all the questions, you need to click Finish again to confirm that you want to end your exam. And the last thing to say on this slide is that when you've finished your exam, you will get your results immediately. The CII provides you with study text, which has 12 chapters, as well as an online study aid called Revision Mate. Once you've logged into Revision Mate, you have chapter tests and even an exam guide. The exam guide is a full mock exam with 50 questions, and it's really good, so make sure you complete this before you take your exam. Now, the CII's R03 study text is still really large, especially considering you only have 50 questions in the exam. And depending on your learning style, it can be a tough read. And that's why you also have the Red Mill Advanced materials to help you. Now, the Red Mill Advanced materials will break the CII chapters down into a much more easy to understand way. And they even provide you with some mock exam questions too. However, these materials complement the CII study text, they don't replace it. And lastly, the recommended minimum number of study hours for this exam is 50, but of course this will vary depending on your ability and experience. Most learners will do a lot more than 50 hours to secure a pass. Having both the CII study text and the Red Mill Advanced materials is great, but it can be a little confusing. Let me run through the interaction between the two, and I hope it helps with your studying. The Red Mill Advanced provides you with 4 modules and then a separate exam module. Module 1 covers chapters 1 and 2 of the CII study text, that's income tax and national insurance. Module 2 covers chapters 3, 4 and 5 of the CII study text, that's capital gains tax, inheritance tax, and also residence and domicile. Module 3 covers chapters 6, 7, 8 and 9. That's self-assessment, stamp duties, VAT and corporation tax, and chapter 9 covers the direct investments. Module 4 covers chapters 10, 11 and 12 of the CII study text. Now remember, those 3 chapters have the most questions in the exam, and they're all bundled together into just one module. Let me remind you, chapter 10 of the CII study text is on indirect investments, and that has 12 questions in the exam. Chapter 11 is on tax and trusts and has 10 questions. And chapter 12 is the consolidation chapter, and that also has 10 questions. Now, lastly, you have an exam module which provides you with 180 questions, and the CII exam has 50 questions. To support you in your studies, 6 revision sessions have been scheduled. Each session will start at 3 o'clock and last for 1.5 hours. The sessions will take place bi-weekly, and you'll notice that they're all on Fridays, well, apart from the last one, which is on a Thursday, as I didn't think you wanted to work on Good Friday. The objective of these sessions is that we'll consolidate your learning. This means that you must have read the corresponding modules and chapters before each session. Your first revision session is on Friday the 31st of January and will cover income tax, which is part of the Red Mill Advanced Module 1 and Chapter 1 of the CII study text. The second session is on Friday the 14th of February, that's Valentine's Day, and will cover capital gains tax and inheritance tax, which is part of the Red Mill Advanced Module 1 and 3. The corresponding CII study text is chapters 2 and 3. Session 3 will cover the part of the Red Mill Advanced Module 4 and the CII study text chapter 10. This is the chapter on indirect investments and has a huge 12 questions in the exam. Session 4 is also within the Red Mill Advanced Module 4 and is the CII study text chapter 11. This has 10 questions in the exam. Session 5 is also within the Red Mill Advances Module 4 and is chapter 12 of the CII study text. This is the consolidation chapter, and yet again it has 10 questions in the exam. The last revision session will be an exam ready session, and that's going to take place on Thursday the 9th of April. Now, I must admit, for an exam which has only 50 questions, you have an awful lot to read, but don't panic about the calculations. These will be quite basic, but you will need to be able to calculate an individual's income tax, capital gains tax, and inheritance tax liability. I actually really like this exam because it's very much hands-on, because you have to apply your knowledge to different client scenarios. If the last session is on April the 9th, then you should be thinking about booking your exam for late April or May. Now, this is the last slide for this video, and it's going to let you know what happens next. You'll receive an email which invites you to each revision session. If you can attend the revision session, you need to accept this invite, and then this will automatically go into your calendar. Now, I'm hoping that you've all downloaded the Microsoft Teams app to your computers. If you haven't, you'll need to do this before the revision session. On the day of the revision session, simply go into your calendar and click within the body of the calendar item. A pop-up will appear on your computer screen, and you need to click Join Teams Meeting. And then on your computer screen, you'll see the title of the revision session. And this is a good sign, as it means that you'll be able to see the session. You also need to hear the session, which means that you will need headphones with a microphone set up on your computer. Now, if you don't have these, then you'll still need to join Teams Meeting on your computer so that you can see the session, but you will also need to telephone in to hear the session. You'll find the telephone number on your email invite. Now, once you've phoned the number, it will ask you for a conference ID, which is also found on the email invite. It does take a little practice, but don't worry, you'll all get the hang of joining these sessions if you haven't already experienced them. And that's all from me for now, but I look forward to supporting you all the way through your R03 exam.